Hi, Amari Salutum here, and today we're going to talk about 5 tips to get a good night's sleep. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about why this topic is so important, just to physical as well as mental health. So in terms of mental health, as a mental health counselor, sleep is very important because a lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, can show symptoms of anxiety or depression or many other mental health disorders. So it's very important that everyone gets the recommended amount of sleep that is needed. For adults, it's about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So as a physician, what do you, or why do you think sleep is so important for your patients?
So sleep serves a number of purposes and functions. One of those is to improve learning and memory and storage of memories and consolidation. So it's very important for learning. Also, it has restorative properties as well. Sleep is very important part of the immune system. When the immune system does repairs on the body and helps clear out some of those bad, decaying cells, some of the cells that may be precancerous. Sleep is a time when the body goes through a stage of getting rid of and killing those bad cells off and allowing the new healthy cells to replace them. Sleep also helps lower stress levels as well. And it's very important that we get that 7 to 9 hours. So that we're entering. There's different stages of sleep, and the sleep stages, they go in cycles. So
that's a little bit of background. What we wanted to share with you are just some 5 easy tips that you can use to make sure that you're getting a restorative and quality sleep. So the first tip that we have is to avoid caffeine at least 6 hours before bedtime. There's actually a study that was done that showed intake of caffeine 0, 3, and 6 hours before bedtime. And it was found even taking caffeine 6 hours before bed impaired sleep quality. The participants in the study, they were getting, some of them were getting the amount of sleep they needed, but they weren't getting the quality of sleep, because what the caffeine did is it disrupted the sleep participants' ability to get into the stages of sleep necessary. So kind of as was mentioned before, you have many different sleep stages. You have about 4 or 5 depending on who you ask. And it's very important that you get through each sleep stage, but ingesting caffeine 6 hours before bed can impair that. So make sure you're cutting your coffee out. Not just coffee, there's also other sources of caffeine.
Energy drinks,
pop. Chocolate even has caffeine. I can't think of any other things. Tea, if it's not herbal. So make sure that you are cutting your caffeine at least 6 hours before bed. So the
Very
next
good tip. Yeah, so tip number 2, that would also be to avoid using electronics and like screens that emit light at least 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. So that includes your cell phone, computer, television, video games, anywhere where there's going to be a bright, light. You want to avoid that 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. And that's because the light actually stimulates the back of the eye, part of the retina, and there's different brain cells, neurons there, that send signals to the brain that stimulate the brain to make it feel like it should be awake. It has to do with the development that occurs through evolutionary history, how our bodies adapted and developed to the sun, and using the sun as a sign that our body should be awake and up and ready to go for the day. So, using those screens kind of stimulates that part of the brain that tells you to wake up and be ready and alert, and that really affects your ability to fall asleep and impairs your ability to enter, those restful sleep stages.
So specifically, it's the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which regulates the circadian rhythm, stimulating the pineal gland and telling the pineal gland not to
make melatonin. Yeah. So tip number 2. That would also be to avoid using electronics and like screens that emit light at least 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. So that includes your cell phone, computer, television, video games. Anywhere where there's going to be a bright, light, you want to avoid that 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. And that's because the light actually stimulates the back of the eye, part of the retina, and there's different brain cells, neurons there, that send signals to the brain that stimulate the brain to make it feel like it should be awake. It has to do with, the development that occurs through evolutionary history, how our bodies adapted and developed to the sun, and using the sun as a sign that our body should be awake and up and ready to go for the day. So using those screens kind of stimulates that part of the brain that tells you to wake up and be ready and alert, and that really affects your ability to fall asleep and impairs your ability to enter those restful sleep stages.
So specifically, it's the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which regulates the circadian rhythm, stimulating the pineal gland and telling the pineal gland not to
make melatonin. So there's a scientific reason, why using electronics, right before bedtime, is recommended to avoid, that using them 1 to 2 hours before bed because of the stimulating effects they have on the brain and the, generating feelings of wakefulness, which will really interfere with your ability to fall asleep. So for those of you, on your phone, texting and, playing video games or, watching YouTube, don't watch this right before bed, or at least, with the screen off. So it's mostly that light, or doing anything really stimulating right before bedtime, exercising right before bedtime, other things that are very stimulating can interfere with your ability to fall asleep.
That segues into our third tip, to create a bedtime routine. It's very important to have consistency with your sleep schedule. So when I say bedtime routine, I think that goes in very nicely with what you were saying. You don't want to have electronics. You don't want to do something that's going to overstimulate the brain. Some ideas of having a sleep routine: recommend to clients do something that's going to help you wind down. So that's going to be very different for everyone. I have some clients that do some sort of facial routine before they go to bed. Meditation can be really great, some type of prayer, because that gets the body and the mind ready to go to sleep. There's an association that your brain will have with creating this routine. So over time, the more you have a routine, the easier it will be to get to bed. Also, another thing that's really great, if you find that your mind is overactive, is to do some type of journaling or brain dump. Just get everything that's on your mind onto a piece of paper, so you'll make room for being able to sleep. It's recommended that when you get in your bed, you fall asleep between 5 to 20 minutes. If you find yourself up tossing and turning in bed for more than a half hour, it's recommended that you get out of your bed and do something relaxing, and then come back to your bed when you feel tired.
Like reading or?
Yeah, doing reading. I'll get to that next tip. That's tip number 4, is to only use your bed for sleeping. You want, again, your brain to associate your bed with sleeping.
You're
Okay,
talking about creating neural connections.
yes. So you don't want to do reading in your bed. You definitely do not want to do homework. You don't want to eat in your bed. Absolutely do not watch TV in bed.
So tip number 5, our last tip for today, is regular exercise, and having an exercise routine helps improve sleep quality. And there's been some studies and research done that shows that having a regular exercise routine can help maintain better sleep quality and help enter and fall asleep easier, especially in older adults, and to enter those restful stages of sleep. And that's because, you know, being active during the day allows the body to fall asleep more easily, and it also helps release those endorphins in the brain that help, you know, deal with stress. So it helps lower stress levels, helps with mental health, physical health, overall, you know, well-being, and that allows, you know, the body to be, you know, more rested when it's ready to fall asleep, and it needs to enter those restorative, you know, stages, and to get that rest so the body can repair itself after exercise. So that's the science behind it, and, you know, we recommend, you know, exercise just for health in general. Yeah, those are our tips for you. Hopefully you found that helpful.
Yeah, and if you're having any sleep difficulties, we're really interested in hearing about that. We can learn from each other here. So please, you know, put some comments below, subscribe. See you next week for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye-bye. We'll see you next time.